Princess Nira stood at the large window of the diplomatic ship, staring at the blue and green planet below. Earth. The word felt dirty in her mind, just like the creatures who lived on it. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against the cold glass, careful not to touch anything else in the room. She was going to marry one of them. A human. The thought made her stomach turn. The door behind her opened with a soft sound. Nira did not turn around. She knew it was her advisor, an old Velothian named Kes who had served her family for decades. Princess, the human delegation will board our ship in 1 hour. Kes said quietly. You must prepare yourself. How does one prepare to touch something so vile? Nira whispered. Her reflection in the window showed her pale blue skin, now even lighter with fear. Her silver eyes looked haunted. Kes moved closer but kept a respectful distance. Your father believes this marriage will prevent war. Millions of Velothian lives depend on this union. Nira finally turned to face her advisor. I know the reasons, Kes. I have heard them 1,000 times. But knowing why does not make it easier. She wrapped her arms around herself. Humans are filthy creatures. They leak water from their skin. They put dead things in their mouths and chew them. Their bodies are covered in tiny monsters that we cannot even see. Microorganisms, Kes corrected gently, and we have been told they are not harmful to us. Not harmful? Nira's voice rose. Kes, I have read the reports. Billions of creatures live on every human body. Billions. They sweat and smell and touch everything with their bare hands. How can I let one of them touch me? How can I share a life with such a being? Kes said nothing. There was nothing to say. They both knew the truth. This marriage was not about choice or comfort. It was about survival. The Velothian Empire and the human coalition had been moving toward war for years. Resources in the neutral zones were running out. Small battles had already begun. Without this treaty, without this marriage between their species, full war would come. And despite what many Velothians believed, humans were dangerous in war. They were unpredictable, stubborn, and refused to die easily. Tell me about him again, Nira said after a long silence. The human I must marry. Kes pulled up a data screen from her wrist device. Ambassador Tae Yang, age 32 in Earth years, former military commander, now serving as Earth's chief diplomat for the outer colonies. He has 3 siblings. His parents run a farming operation on Earth. He is considered intelligent, patient, and fair by both human and alien testimonies. Does he know how much I despise his kind? Nira asked. I suspect he can guess, Kes replied. Our people have not hidden their feelings about humans. But according to all reports, he has never responded with anger or insult. He simply continues his work. Nira turned back to the window. Earth was so close now. She could see the shapes of continents, the white swirls of clouds. Somewhere down there, Ambassador Tae Yang was preparing to board this ship, preparing to meet his future wife. Did he feel the same disgust she felt? Or were humans too simple to understand such refined sensibilities? The hour passed too quickly. Nira changed into her formal robes, the deep purple fabric that marked her royal status. She placed filters in her nose that would block most smells. She pulled on thin gloves that covered her hands and arms. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a princess preparing for battle, not a bride preparing for love. The meeting room was cold and formal. Nira stood on one side with her attendants. The doorway on the opposite side would bring the humans. She focused on her breathing, trying to stay calm. She had been trained her whole life for diplomatic situations. She could survive this meeting. She just had to maintain distance and dignity. The door opened. 3 humans walked in, and Nira felt her breath catch despite her determination to remain composed. The one in front was clearly Ambassador Tae Yang. He was tall for a human with dark hair cut short and neat. He wore simple but clean clothing in dark colors. His skin was a warm brown shade that was completely foreign to Nira's experience. And his eyes, dark and deep, looked directly at her with an expression she could not read. Behind him walked a woman with similar features, perhaps a relative, and another man in military uniform. All 3 stopped at a respectful distance and bowed in the Velothian style. They had studied her culture. That was something, at least. Princess Nira, Tae Yang said, and his voice was deeper than she expected, smoother. I'm honored to meet you. I am Ambassador Tae Yang of Earth. Nira forced herself to nod. She did not bow back. Let him understand the difference in their positions. Ambassador. She saw it then, a flicker in his eyes. He noticed her coldness, her distance, the way she held herself as far from him as the room allowed, but his expression did not change. He simply nodded back, accepting her response. "This is Dr. Hana, my sister and xenobiologist," he continued, gesturing to the woman, "and Captain Jiwoo, head of security for this delegation." Both humans bowed again. Nira barely acknowledged them. Her eyes stayed on Taeyang, watching for any sign of aggression or offense, but he remained calm, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. "Perhaps we should discuss the treaty terms," Nira said stiffly. Business was better than small talk. "Business maintained distance, of course," Taeyang agreed. "Whatever makes you most comfortable, Princess." They sat at opposite ends of a long table. For the next 2 hours, they reviewed the treaty documents with their advisors. Nira watched Taeyang carefully throughout the meeting. He was patient, listening more than speaking. When he did speak, his words were clear and direct. He did not try to move closer to her. He did not attempt any friendly gestures. He simply worked through the documents with professional efficiency. It should have made her feel better. Instead, Nira found herself feeling strangely unsettled. She had expected a crude, smelly creature with poor manners. What she got was a composed, respectful diplomat who seemed completely unbothered by her obvious disgust. As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to leave, Taeyang paused at the doorway. He turned back to look at her, and for just a moment his diplomatic mask slipped. She saw something in his eyes. Was it sadness? Understanding? Pity? "I know this is not what you wanted, Princess," he said quietly. "I will do my best to make it bearable for both of us." Then he was gone, and Nira was left standing in the empty room, her hands still gloved, her filters still in place, and her mind full of confusion she did not want to examine. 3 days later, Nira found herself standing on Earth's surface for the first time. The transport had landed at a diplomatic compound in a city the humans called Seoul. Everything felt wrong. The air was thicker than on her homeworld, full of strange smells that her filters could not completely block. The gravity pulled at her differently, and everywhere there were humans. They walked past on streets below the compound. They worked in the buildings around her. They were inside the compound itself, preparing for the upcoming wedding ceremonies. So many of them. So close. Nira wore a full bodysuit under her robes now, covering every bit of her skin. She wore gloves and filters and kept her distance from everyone. Her attendants had prepared a sealed room for her, cleaned with Velothian standards. She spent most of her time there, leaving only when absolutely necessary. The human delegation tried to be accommodating. They had prepared Velothian food for her. They had made sure the temperature in her quarters matched her preferences. They had even installed water systems that met her cleanliness standards. But they could not change what they were, and what they were made Nira's skin crawl. On the 4th day, there was an incident. Nira was walking through a corridor with her attendants when a group of human staff members came around the corner. They were laughing about something, not paying attention. One of them, a young woman carrying a stack of data tablets, bumped directly into Nira. The woman stumbled. Nira gasped and jumped back, pressing herself against the wall. The tablets clattered to the floor. For a moment, everyone froze. "I am so sorry," the woman said quickly, bending to gather her tablets. "I was not watching where I was going." "Please forgive me, Princess," but Nira was not listening. She was staring at her arm where the woman had touched her. Even through the protective suit, she felt contaminated. Her breathing came fast and shallow. She needed to get back to her room. She needed to clean herself immediately. "Princess?" one of her attendants asked with concern. Nira turned and walked quickly back toward her quarters, almost running. Behind her, she heard the confused whispers of the humans. She did not care. She just needed to be clean again. Word of the incident spread quickly. By evening, tensions in the compound had risen noticeably. Human staff members whispered when Nira passed. Some looked hurt. Others looked angry. Did the princess think she was too good to breathe the same air as them? Was she mocking their entire species? Ambassador Taeyang said nothing publicly, but Nira noticed he kept even more distance from her after that. His expression remained polite and neutral, but there was something cold in his eyes now. Something disappointed. 2 days later, there was a knock on Nira's door. Her attendant checked the security screen and turned back with surprise. "Princess, it is Dr. Hana, the ambassador's sister. She requests a private meeting with you." Nira almost refused, but curiosity won over caution. "Let her in, but she must stay by the door." The door opened and Hana entered alone. She wore simple clothing and carried a small bag. She stopped just inside the entrance and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for seeing me, Princess," Hana said. "What do you want?" Nira asked, staying on the opposite side of the room. "I want to talk," Hana replied, not as diplomat to royalty, just as one person to another. "We are not the same kind of person," Nira said coldly. "No, we are not," Hana agreed. "But perhaps that is why we should talk. May I sit?" Nira gestured to a chair near the door. Hana sat down and placed her bag beside her. She looked around the room carefully as if examining everything. "I am a xenobiologist," Hana began. "I study how different species live and survive in different ways. It is my life's work, and I have spent years learning about the Velothian people." "How nice for you," Nira said. Hana smiled slightly. "You think we are filthy, disgusting, covered in disease and contamination. Is that correct?" The directness surprised Nira. "You know this already. Everyone knows this. Your kind is inferior in terms of cleanliness and health." "By your standards, yes," Hana nodded. "By Velothian standards, humans are incredibly dirty. We do sweat. We do carry billions of microorganisms on our bodies. We do eat organic matter and touch surfaces without protection." She paused. "But Princess, have you ever wondered why humans survive in places that kill other species?" Nira frowned. "What do you mean?" Hana opened her bag and pulled out a data pad. "May I show you something?" At Nira's hesitant nod, she activated a holographic display. "This is a human child. She is 5 years old. Notice her skin, her energy, her health." The hologram showed a small girl running and playing. Now this is a simulation of that same child raised in Velothian cleanroom standards. The hologram changed. The same girl now looked weak, pale, sick. "What is this?" Nira demanded. "The truth about human biology," Hana said gently. "We need our microorganisms, Princess. They are not parasites or diseases. They are partners. They help us digest food. They protect us from actual harmful bacteria. They train our immune systems to be strong. Without them, we become weak and sick." She changed the display again. "This is why humans can eat almost anything. Why we can live in extreme temperatures. Why we survived on a planet that tried very hard to kill us for millions of years. Our dirtiness is actually our strength." Nira stared at the hologram, her mind working through this new information. "But you smell," she said weakly. "Yes," Hana agreed. "We produce scents. But tell me something honestly, Princess. When you were in the same room as my brother, did he actually smell bad? Or did your filters and your expectations make you think he would smell bad?" Nira opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. In truth, during that first meeting, she had smelled nothing offensive. The filters had blocked most scents, but what little had come through had been not unpleasant. Just different, unfamiliar. "Humans also sweat," Hana continued. "Do you know why?" "To expel waste from your bodies," Nira answered, repeating what she had been taught. "Partially," Hana said, "but mainly for cooling. Princess, humans can run for hours without stopping. We can chase prey or flee from predators across vast distances in heat that would kill most species. We are endurance hunters. We outlast our enemies. And we do this because we can cool our bodies through sweating. Your people are stronger and faster in short bursts. But in a long chase, we would win every time." The hologram showed humans running across ancient plains, chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. It showed human soldiers marching through deserts and jungles. It showed human colonists surviving on worlds where other species had failed. "Every trait you find disgusting," Hana said quietly, "is a trait that helped humans survive. We are not dirty because we are inferior. We are different because we adapted to different challenges." Nira sat down slowly, still watching the hologram. She felt something shifting in her understanding, like ice beginning to crack. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Hana stood and picked up her bag. "Because my brother is a good man, and he does not deserve to be treated like a monster. Because this marriage is supposed to bring our peoples together, but that cannot happen if you see us as beneath you, and because—" She paused at the door. "I saw you jump away from that staff member like she had attacked you," she cried afterwards. She thought she had ruined the peace treaty. Shame heated Nira's face, though she tried to hide it. "Think about what I have said," Hana finished, "and if you want to learn more, I am willing to teach you. But only if you truly want to understand, not just to endure." Then she was gone, and Nira was left alone with thoughts that would not leave her in peace. The formal garden ceremony was scheduled for the following week. It was a human tradition, Nira had been told. The two families would meet in a natural setting to share food and conversation before the wedding. The idea of eating outdoors, surrounded by plants and dirt and insects, made Nira feel ill. But the treaty required her participation in both Velothian and human customs. She spent the days before the ceremony thinking about what Hana had shown her. The holograms kept playing in her mind. Humans running for hours, human children needing their microorganisms to stay healthy, human adaptability that let them survive anywhere. It did not make her comfortable with them, but it made her wonder if her understanding had been incomplete. On the morning of the garden ceremony, her attendants dressed her in lighter robes suitable for Earth's warm climate. She still wore her protective suit underneath. She still wore gloves, but she left the nose filters behind. It was a small change, but it felt significant. The garden was located behind the diplomatic compound. Nira had not visited it before. As she walked the path toward the ceremony area, she was surprised by what she saw. The garden was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that was completely different from Velothian aesthetics. Flowers grew in bright colors she had no names for. Trees spread their branches overhead, creating patterns of light and shadow. Water ran through a small stream, making soft sounds. The human delegation was already there. Taeyang stood with his family near a long table covered with various foods. He wore traditional clothing, simple but elegant in design. When he saw Nira approaching, he bowed formally. His family followed his example. Nira bowed back, slightly deeper than she had at their first meeting. She saw surprise flicker across Taeyang's face, quickly hidden. The ceremony began with formal introductions. Taeyang's parents were farmers, just as the reports had said. They were older, with weathered skin and gentle voices. They spoke simply and kindly, welcoming Nira to Earth. His sister Hana was there, of course, offering Nira a small smile. His younger brother, a botanist named Do-hyun, explained the plants in the garden with clear enthusiasm. And there was a younger sister, Yuna, barely an adult, who watched everything with curious eyes. Nira's own attendants stood respectfully behind her. She had no family with her. Her father had refused to come to Earth, and her siblings were managing the empire in his absence. She felt suddenly very alone among these humans and their tight family bonds. "Please sit," Taeyang's mother said, gesturing to the table. "We have prepared food following the Velothian guidelines you provided." The table held dishes from both cultures. Nira recognized some Velothian preparations, though they looked slightly different. The human food was unfamiliar and vaguely threatening. But she sat, and the humans sat, and servants began bringing plates. The conversation was awkward at first. Taeyang's family asked careful questions about Velothian culture. Nira answered briefly, not offering more information than necessary. But Do-hyun's genuine interest in her homeworld's plant life slowly drew her into longer explanations. She found herself describing the crystal gardens of her palace, the way plants grew in geometric perfection under controlled conditions. "It sounds beautiful," Do-hyun said sincerely. "Very different from Earth's gardens, where everything grows wild and competes for space. Does that not create chaos?" Nira asked. Sometimes, he admitted, but it also creates strength. The plants that survive are tougher, more adaptable. They learn to thrive in imperfect conditions. Like humans themselves, Nira thought, thriving in conditions that should kill them. After the meal, Taeyang's mother suggested a walk through the garden. "It is traditional to walk and talk," she explained. To get to know one another in a relaxed setting, Nira agreed reluctantly. The group spread out naturally, different people pairing off for conversation. Nira found herself walking with Taeyang, slightly apart from the others. He maintained a respectful distance, not coming too close. They walked in silence for a while. The garden path was made of smooth stones, but some were uneven. Nira was not used to Earth's gravity yet, and her balance felt off. She focused on her feet, watching each step carefully. "The garden was my grandfather's project," Taeyang said quietly. "He started it 50 years ago. He believed that peace required spaces where different things could grow together." "A symbolic message," Nira observed. "Yes, but also practical. Some of these plants actually grow better when planted near each other. They protect each other from pests. They share nutrients through their roots." Nira looked at the plants around them with new eyes. Different species growing together, helping each other survive. The idea was foreign to Velothian thinking, where purity and separation were valued. She was so distracted by this thought that she did not notice the uneven stone directly in her path. Her foot caught on it, and suddenly she was falling forward, her arms flailing for balance. Before she could hit the ground, strong hands caught her arm and steadied her weight. Taiyang had moved with surprising speed, his reflexes fast. His hand wrapped around her elbow, his other hand steadying her shoulder. For a moment they stood frozen like that. Nira felt the warmth of his hands through the thin fabric of her gloves and robes. She felt the strength in his grip, careful not to hurt her but firm enough to hold her steady. She felt the closeness of his body, close enough to catch her but not pressed against her. And she realized something shocking. His touch did not feel dirty. It did not feel contaminating. It felt safe. Taiyang released her immediately, stepping back quickly. "I apologize, Princess," he said formally. "I should have warned you about that stone. Are you hurt?" Nira stared at her arm where his hand had been. She could still feel the warmth of his palm, the gentle pressure of his fingers. "I am not hurt," she said quietly. "I am sorry for touching you without permission," Taiyang continued. He looked genuinely distressed. "I know physical contact is difficult for you. I simply reacted without thinking." "You kept me from falling," Nira said, looking up at him. His dark eyes met hers, full of concern and apology. She saw calluses on his hands, marks from work and training. These were not the soft hands of someone who avoided labor. These were hands that had done difficult things, survived hard times. "Still, I should have been more careful," he said. They continued walking, but something had changed. Nira kept glancing at Taiyang from the corner of her eye. She noticed how he moved, efficient and controlled. She noticed how he was careful not to brush against plants unnecessarily, showing respect for the garden. She noticed how he spoke to his family with warmth and to her with patient formality. When they returned to the main ceremony area, the afternoon was ending. Taiyang's family said their goodbyes warmly. His mother took Nira's gloved hands carefully in her own, meeting her eyes. "I know this is not easy for you," she said softly, "but I hope you will find happiness here. My son is a good man. He will do his best to make you comfortable." Nira nodded, not trusting her voice. That night, back in her sealed quarters, Nira removed her gloves and stared at her bare arms. She examined the place where Taiyang had caught her, looking for some sign of contamination, some mark of disgust. But there was nothing. Just her blue skin, unmarked and clean. She thought about the warmth of his hands, the gentleness of his grip, the speed with which he had moved to protect her from harm. She had spent weeks dreading his touch, imagining it would feel like crawling insects or burning acid. But when it finally happened, it had felt like nothing more or less than another person trying to help her. It was a small thing, a simple gesture, but it cracked something inside her that had been frozen solid with fear and prejudice. And through that crack, questions began to seep in, questions she was not ready to answer but could no longer completely ignore. What if everything she had been taught about humans was incomplete? What if disgust and contempt had blinded her people to something important? What if the filthy, sweating microorganism-covered humans were not inferior at all but simply different? And what if different was not the same as wrong? Nira lay down in her sterile bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come easily tonight. The sabotage happened 3 days before the wedding. Nira woke in the middle of the night to alarms blaring throughout the compound. Red lights flashed in her room. Her attendants rushed in looking frightened and confused. Through her window she could see people running in the corridors outside. "What is happening?" Nira demanded, pulling on her robes. "We do not know, Princess," her chief attendant replied. "But we have been ordered to remain in our quarters until the all-clear is given." They waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, Captain Jiwoo's voice came over the communication system. His words were calm but serious. "Attention all compound residents. The water supply has been contaminated with a biological agent. Do not, under any circumstances, drink from the taps or use water for washing. Medical teams are distributing sealed water supplies now. Anyone experiencing symptoms of illness should report to the medical bay immediately." Nira felt her blood go cold. Contaminated water. Biological agent. The words confirmed her worst fears about this planet and its lack of proper safety standards. "Who did this?" she asked. Her attendant checked the security feeds. Unknown. But Captain Jiwoo is investigating. He believes it was someone opposed to the treaty. Someone who wants to stop the wedding. By morning, the extent of the crisis became clear. More than 60 people in the compound had drunk the contaminated water before the alarm was raised. Both humans and Velothians were falling ill. The symptoms started with fever and nausea, then progressed to severe weakness and difficulty breathing. Nira's quarters had their own water filtration system, separate from the main compound supply. She and her attendants were safe, but from her window she watched as medical personnel rushed back and forth, moving the sick to the medical bay. She saw Tae Yang among them. He was not sick. Instead, he was carrying a Velothian worker who had collapsed in the hallway. The worker was twice as large as a human, but Tae Yang lifted him carefully, supporting his weight as he moved toward medical help. His face was set with determination, his uniform already stained with sweat from the exertion. Nira watched him disappear into the medical building, then returned minutes later to help someone else. And again. Should we offer assistance? Her attendant asked quietly. Nira hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay in her safe, clean quarters. But watching Tae Yang work, watching people suffer, made something uncomfortable twist in her chest. Yes, she said finally. Bring medical supplies from our ship. The specialized equipment we brought for emergency use. Take it to the medical bay. Her attendants moved quickly to obey, but Nira remained at the window watching. The human medical staff worked with impressive efficiency. Dr. Hana was everywhere, moving from patient to patient, taking readings, administering treatments. Human nurses carried water and supplies, changed bedding, held containers for patients who were vomiting. Tasks that seemed beneath them. Tasks that required touching sick people and cleaning up bodily fluids. But they did not hesitate. Captain Jiwoo appeared on the communication system again. We have identified the contamination agent. It is a modified bacteria that affects both human and Velothian digestive systems. We are synthesizing an antidote, but it will take time. In the meanwhile, we must keep patients hydrated and stable. Nira learned later that the saboteur had been caught. A human radical. Someone who believed the treaty was a betrayal of human superiority. The irony was not lost on anyone. A human had created a weapon that harmed both species equally. As the day progressed, Nira noticed something strange. The humans who had been infected were recovering faster than the Velothians. Not completely, they were still sick, but their symptoms seemed less severe. They bounced back more quickly. She asked her attendant to find out why. The answer came from Dr. Hana through a recorded message. Human immune systems are extremely robust. We evolved fighting off diseases constantly. Our bodies are already equipped to battle unfamiliar bacteria and viruses. The Velothians, who live in much cleaner environments, have immune systems that are less experienced with this type of threat. They will recover, but it will take longer. The filthy humans and their disease-ridden bodies were actually helping them survive. On the second day of the crisis, Nira made a decision. She left her quarters and walked to the medical bay. Her attendants protested, but she overruled them. She needed to see this for herself. The medical bay was chaos. Beds lined every wall filled with sick people. The air smelled of medicine and sickness. Medical staff rushed between patients. And in the middle of it all, Tae Yang was still there. He had been working for over 30 hours straight. His uniform was rumpled and dirty. His hair was messy. His face showed exhaustion. But he was still carrying water to patients, still helping medical staff move people, still offering quiet words of encouragement to those who were afraid. He saw Nira enter and stopped. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the crowded room. Then one of the Velothian patients, a young male named Kos, who worked in food services, cried out in distress. He was trying to get out of bed, confused and disoriented from fever. Tae Yang moved immediately to his side, gently pushing him back down. Easy, Tae Yang said quietly. You need to rest. Let the medicine work. Kos grabbed Tae Yang's arm, his grip tight with panic. I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. Yes, you can, Tae Yang said firmly but kindly. Look at me. Breathe with me, in slowly. Out slowly, he demonstrated, breathing deeply and evenly. Kos watched him and tried to match the rhythm. Gradually, his panic subsided. His breathing steadied. He lay back down, exhausted. Tae Yang stayed with him, one hand on his shoulder, until he fell asleep. Only then did he stand and turn to find Nira watching him. "Princess," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "You should not be here. The medical bay is contaminated. So is the entire compound," Nira replied. She gestured around them. "You have been working without rest. People need help," he said simply, as if that explained everything. Perhaps it did. Before Nira could respond, Dr. Hana called out urgently,
Tae-yang.
"I need help with the Velothian ambassador. He is going into respiratory distress." Tae-yang did not hesitate. He ran to help his sister, grabbing medical equipment and holding the ambassador steady while Hana administered emergency treatment. Nira watched as they worked together, smooth and coordinated, fighting to keep someone alive. The crisis continued into the third day. More patients arrived as the contamination spread through people who had shared food or drinks with others before the alarm. The medical bay expanded into additional rooms. Supplies ran low. Everyone was exhausted, and then Nira herself fell ill. It happened suddenly. One moment she was returning to her quarters after bringing more supplies to the medical bay. The next moment the world was spinning, her vision blurring. She felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her. Again. Those same hands that had caught her in the garden now held her steady as her legs gave out. "I have you," Tae-yang's voice said, close to her ear. "I have you." Nira tried to speak but could not form words. Fever burned through her body. She felt herself being lifted, cradled against someone's chest. The world spun and blurred. Voices called out. Lights flashed past. And through it all, those steady arms held her. That calm voice reassured her. "Stay with me, princess. We are almost there. Just hold on." Then darkness took her and she knew nothing more. When Nira woke, she was in a bed in the medical bay. Her body ached. Her throat was dry. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head. Tae-yang sat in a chair beside her bed. His head was tilted back against the wall, his eyes closed. He was asleep, but even in sleep he looked exhausted. His hand rested on the edge of her bed, as if he had been holding hers and let go when he fell asleep. Dr. Hana noticed Nira was awake and came over quickly, checking her vital signs. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Terrible," Nira whispered honestly. Hana smiled slightly. "That is normal, but you will recover. We got you here quickly and the antidote is working now." "How long?" Nira asked. "You have been unconscious for 18 hours, Hana replied. She glanced at her sleeping brother. "He has not left your side." "I finally ordered him to rest or I would sedate him." Nira looked at Tae-yang again. His clothes were clean now, but his face still showed the strain of days without proper rest. He had stayed with her. Through her illness, through her fear, he had stayed. "Why?" she asked softly. Hana understood the question. "Because he cares. Not just about the treaty or peace between our peoples. About you. As a person who is scared and sick and far from home." She paused. "That is who my brother is, princess. He sees people, not categories. Not clean or dirty, not superior or inferior. Just people who sometimes need help." She left Nira alone with her thoughts and her sleeping guard. Nira watched Tae-yang's peaceful face and felt something shift inside her. Something fundamental and irreversible. Nira spent 5 days recovering in the medical bay. During that time, she had little to do except think. Her body was weak, her mind restless. The medical staff had given her a data pad loaded with entertainment and information. At first, she watched Velothian programs from home. But those felt distant now, disconnected from her current reality. Instead, she found herself accessing Earth's historical databases. She told herself it was just curiosity. She needed to understand the people she was joining her life with. That was all. Nothing more. But as she read, she discovered something unexpected. The truth about humanity was far different from what she had been taught. The Velothian education she had received painted humans as lucky survivors. A species that had stumbled into space travel despite their biological inferiority. They had conquered their planet not through superiority, but through sheer stubborn numbers. They multiplied quickly and consumed resources faster than they could be replaced. They were a plague species, her teachers had said. Useful now only because they could survive in places where more refined species could not. But the databases told a different story. Humans had evolved on a planet that tried very hard to kill them. Earth was not a gentle world. It had extreme temperatures, deadly predators, diseases that swept through populations, natural disasters that destroyed everything in their path. Most of the other intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved on kinder worlds. They developed intelligence in environments where cooperation and planning were rewarded, where survival was relatively assured. Humans developed intelligence as a last resort. They were not the strongest creatures on their planet, not the fastest, not the most protected by natural armor or weapons. They should have died out, but they refused to die. They learned to throw rocks with precision, extending their reach. They learned to run for hours, outlasting faster prey. They learned to work together, cooperating to bring down animals that could have killed them individually. They learned to use fire to cook food to stay warm in, killing cold, and their bodies adapted in ways that seemed disgusting to other species but were actually brilliant solutions to survival. Problems, sweating. Nira had always thought of human sweating as a sign of their lack of control over their own bodies, but now she read about persistence hunting. Ancient humans would chase prey for hours under a hot sun. The animals they hunted would run fast at first, quickly outdistancing the humans. But they could not cool themselves while running. They overheated and had to stop. The humans, sweating constantly, never overheated. They could run hour after hour, tracking their prey, pushing it beyond exhaustion. Eventually, the animal would collapse, too weak to run anymore. And the patient, sweating humans would finally catch up. Nira tried to imagine having that kind of endurance, running for hours, never giving up. It seemed impossible. It seemed terrifying. It seemed incredible. The microorganisms were another revelation. She had thought of the billions of bacteria on human skin as parasites, as disease. But the database explained it differently. Humans had formed partnerships with beneficial bacteria. These organisms protected human skin from harmful invaders. They helped digest food, breaking down nutrients that human bodies could not process alone. They trained infant immune systems to recognize threats. Humans without these bacteria became sick. Studies showed that children raised in perfectly sterile environments developed more allergies, more illnesses, weaker immune responses. They needed the bacteria. It was not contamination. It was cooperation. It was survival. Nira read about the human immune system and for the first time understood why humans had recovered from the contaminated water faster than Velothians. The human body was a battlefield. It fought off threats constantly every day, building experience and memory. Human immune systems recognized patterns, learned from encounters, became stronger with each challenge. The Velothian immune system, evolved in clean, controlled environments, had never needed to become so aggressive. It was like a soldier who had never seen battle compared to a veteran of 1,000 wars. She read about human exploration and colonization. Humans had been in space for less than 2 centuries, but they were already everywhere. They settled on planets that other species had deemed uninhabitable. Too hot, too cold, wrong atmosphere, dangerous wildlife. Humans arrived, adapted, and thrived. They ate the local plants and animals, their flexible digestive systems handling foods that would poison other species. They tolerated temperature swings that would kill Velothians. They worked in conditions that required other species to wear full environmental suits. And they did it all with that stubborn refusal to admit that something might be impossible. One article caught her attention particularly. It was about a mining colony on a planet called Rakesh 4. The planet was hot, humid, and filled with aggressive fungal life that infected any organic material. Most species needed sealed environmental suits at all times. The colony was run by machines with alien workers in protected habitats. Then humans arrived. They worked in light clothing, in direct contact with the environment. The fungus tried to colonize their skin. Their immune systems fought it off. Their skin bacteria competed with the fungus for space. They adapted. They survived. They even claimed to enjoy the climate because it reminded them of places on Earth called tropical rainforests. The mine's productivity doubled within a year. Humans could work longer hours, respond to problems faster, and maintain equipment more efficiently because they were not trapped in clumsy protective suits. That was the pattern everywhere humans went. They were not conquering the galaxy through superior technology or greater intelligence. They were succeeding through pure, stubborn adaptability. Through their willingness to touch the world directly, to live in it rather than above it, to partner with it rather than control it. Nira thought about the garden where she had walked with Tai Yang. Plants growing together, supporting each other. His grandfather had understood something important. Diversity was not weakness. Mixing was not contamination. It was strength. On her third day of reading, Dr. Hana came to check on her progress. She saw what Nira was studying and smiled slightly. Finding anything interesting? Hana asked. You did not tell me the complete truth, Nira said, when you showed me those holograms about human children needing bacteria. You made it sound simple, but it is more than that. Hana sat down in the chair Taeyang had occupied during Nira's first night. Yes, she agreed. It is much more than that. But I had to start somewhere. You are not ready to hear all of it. Tell me now, Nira requested. I am ready now, so Hana talked. She explained human evolution in detail. She described the challenges Earth had presented and the solutions humans had developed. She talked about human psychology, the way their minds worked, the values their difficult history had instilled in them. Humans believe in resilience, Hana said. We fall down, we get back up. We fail, we try again. We face impossible odds and we survive anyway. It is not always logical. It is not always efficient. But it is deeply, fundamentally who we are. Your people see the universe as something to be ordered and controlled, she continued. You build perfect systems and maintain them carefully. It is beautiful in its own way. But humans see the universe as something wild and unpredictable. We embrace chaos because we are products of chaos. We are comfortable with mess because mess is where we evolved. That sounds exhausting, Nira said. Hana laughed. It is, but it is also exhilarating. There is freedom in accepting that you cannot control everything. There is strength in bending instead of breaking. Is that why Taeyang stayed with me? Nira asked quietly. Because humans refuse to give up? Partly, Hana said, but also because he sees value in you beyond the treaty. He believes you are more than your prejudices. He is waiting for you to believe it too. After Hana left, Nira returned to her reading, but now she had new questions. She searched for information about human relationships, human marriages, human families. What did it mean to marry a human? What would he expect from her? The answers were both comforting and terrifying. Human marriages were partnerships. They involved physical closeness, yes, but also emotional intimacy. Humans valued communication, shared experiences, mutual support. They did not expect perfection from their partners. They expected effort, honesty, and patience. Could she do that? Could she let someone that close to her, both physically and emotionally? Could she touch and be touched without fear? Could she share her life with someone so fundamentally different from herself? Nira did not know, but for the first time she wanted to try. On her last day in the medical bay, Taeyang visited. It was the first time she had seen him since waking up. He had been busy helping Captain Ji-woo investigate the sabotage and coordinate security improvements. He looked better now, properly rested, though his eyes still held concern. How are you feeling, Princess? He asked formally, standing at a respectful distance. Better, Nira said. Dr. Hana says I can return to my quarters tomorrow. That is good news, Taeyang said. He hesitated, then added, I am glad you are recovering. I was worried. You stayed with me, Nira said. While I was unconscious, you did not need to do that. I wanted to. He replied simply. I wanted you to know you were not alone. Nira looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the calluses on his hands, the signs of work and struggle. The morning after Nira left the medical bay, a message arrived from her father. It was marked urgent and private. She read it alone in her quarters, and with each line her heart grew heavier. The Emperor had found another solution. A different treaty, one that did not require marriage. The Velothian diplomatic corps had negotiated trade agreements and territorial boundaries that would satisfy both sides. The wedding was no longer necessary for peace. Nira could come home. She could be released from this obligation to marry a human. Her father's message was kind, even gentle. He understood what he had asked of her. He knew how difficult it had been. If she wanted to leave, he would understand. The ship would arrive in 3 days. She only had to say the word. Nira read the message 3 times. She stood at her window, looking out at the compound where humans walked and worked. She thought about the garden where Taeyang had caught her, the medical bay where he had stayed by her side, the databases full of human history and human resilience. She thought about going home to her clean, controlled, perfect world. And she realized something surprising. She did not want to go, not because she had to stay, not because of duty or treaty or obligation. but because she wanted to understand these strange, adaptable, impossible humans. She wanted to know what it felt like to live without fear of contamination. She wanted to learn how to be comfortable in chaos. She wanted to try, but she was still afraid. Years of conditioning, of believing humans were inferior and disgusting, did not disappear in a few days of reading. She needed help. She needed to see the human world not through databases but through experience. She sent a message to Tai Yang, requesting a private meeting. He arrived within the hour, looking curious and slightly concerned. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "I want to learn about your world," Nira said directly. "Not through data files, through real experience. Will you teach me?" Tai Yang studied her face carefully. What brought this on? Nira could have lied, could have given a diplomatic answer, but something about his steady gaze made her want to be honest. "My father sent word. I can leave if I want. The marriage is no longer required for the treaty." She saw surprise flash across Tai Yang's face, followed by something that might have been disappointment. But he composed himself quickly. "I see, and what have you decided?" "I do not know yet," Nira admitted. "I need to understand what I would be choosing. Not the political arrangement, not the treaty obligations, but the actual life, your life. Show me how humans live. Help me understand what I am so afraid of." Tai Yang was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, I will show you. But Princess, I have a condition." "What condition?" "No protective suits, no gloves, no filters." He held up his hand at her immediate protest. "I will not force you to touch things you are uncomfortable with, but you need to experience the world as humans do. Otherwise, you will just be observing from inside a barrier. You will never really understand." Nira felt her pulse quicken with anxiety. No protective gear. Direct contact with the human world. Everything in her training screamed that this was dangerous, foolish, contaminating. But if she wanted to make a real choice, she needed to know what she was choosing. "All right," she agreed, her voice barely steady. "When do we start?" "Now," Tai Yang said. "Today, while you still have courage." He took her to the market district in Seoul. It was nothing like the sanitized shopping centers of her home world. The market was outdoors, open to the air. Hundreds of humans crowded the streets, browsing stalls that sold everything from fresh food to clothing to electronics. Smells mingled in the air, cooking food, flowers, rain on pavement. Sounds overlapped. Vendors calling out prices, children laughing, music playing from somewhere nearby. Nira stood at the edge of it all, feeling overwhelmed. Her hands trembled. She had removed her protective suit and gloves as promised, wearing only light robes. Her blue skin drew curious looks from passing humans, but most were too polite to stare openly. "It is too much," she whispered. "Start small," Tai Yang said quietly. "Just walk with me. You do not have to touch anything yet. Just observe." They walked slowly through the market. Tai Yang pointed out different stalls, explained what was being sold. He bought roasted nuts from one vendor, demonstrating how the transaction worked. He did not offer any to Nira, not pushing her past her comfort. But she watched how he ate them casually, how he spoke with the vendor, how comfortable he was in this chaos. They passed a stall selling flowers. The vendor, an elderly woman with a warm smile, called out to them. She spoke Korean and Tai Yang translated. "She says the blue orchids would match your skin beautifully." The woman held out one of the flowers, offering it to Nira. It was beautiful, delicate petals in shades of blue and silver. Nira stared at it frozen. To take it, she would have to reach out. She would have to touch something that had been touched by countless humans. Her hand would make contact with the stem, with the moisture on the petals, with the tiny particles of pollen. She saw Tai Yang watching her carefully, his expression neutral, giving her space to make her own choice. The vendor waited patiently, still smiling, unaware of the internal battle Nira was fighting. Slowly, shakily, Nira reached out her hand. Her fingers touched the stem. It felt cool and slightly damp, alive. She took the flower, cradling it carefully in her palm. Nothing terrible happened. No burning sensation, no immediate illness. Just a flower in her hand. The vendor beamed and said something else. Tai Yang translated again. "She says you have made a good choice. May it bring you beauty and joy." Nira managed a small nod. Tai Yang paid for the flower and they moved on. But Nira kept looking at it, kept feeling the stem between her fingers. She had touched something from the human world, and she had survived. They continued through the market. Taiyang showed her a bookstore, a shop that sold traditional crafts, a cafe where people sat outdoors drinking coffee. Everywhere, humans lived their lives casually, touching things without fear, breathing the same air, sharing space without concern. At one point, a ball rolled across their path. A child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, came running after it. She was small, with dark hair and pigtails and a bright smile. She grabbed the ball, but then noticed Nira staring at her. The child stopped and stared back, curious. "Hello," the girl said in careful English. "You are blue. Are you from space?" Nira did not know what to say, but Taiyang crouched down to the child's level. "Yeah, she is from very far away. She came to visit our planet. Cool," the girl said enthusiastically. "I am Yuna. What is your name?" "Nira," she managed to say. Yuna smiled brightly. "That is a pretty name. Do you want to play ball with me?" The question was so innocent, so simple. This child saw nothing disgusting about Nira. She just saw another person, someone who might play with her. "I do not know how," Nira admitted. "It is easy," Yuna demonstrated, bouncing the ball on the ground. "You just throw it or kick it or bounce it. Want to try?" Before Nira could answer, Yuna tossed the ball gently toward her. Instinct made Nira catch it. The ball was slightly rough in texture, warm from the sun, probably touched by countless children's hands. She held it, feeling its weight, its realness. "Now throw it back," Yuna encouraged. Nira threw the ball back, somewhat awkwardly. Yuna caught it and laughed with delight. They did this a few more times before Yuna's mother called her away. The child waved goodbye enthusiastically, and Nira found herself waving back. "She was not afraid of me," Nira said quietly. "Children usually are not," Taeyang replied. "They have not learned prejudice yet. They just see people, they walked more." Taeyang took her to a small restaurant where they sat outside at a table. He ordered food for both of them. Simple dishes, nothing too unfamiliar. Rice, vegetables, some grilled meat for him, and a vegetable stew for her that he promised was safe for Velothean digestion. The food arrived on simple plates. No sterilization fields. No individual protective containers. Just plates that had been washed and used by other diners. Nira stared at her food, her appetite warring with her anxiety. "You do not have to eat it," Taiyang said. "But I promise it is clean by human standards. The restaurant has excellent health ratings." "Human standards are different from Velothean standards," Nira pointed out. "Yes," he agreed. "But humans eat here every day and remain healthy. Our standards are sufficient for our needs." Nira picked up the spoon. It felt strange in her hand, heavier than Velothean utensils. She scooped up some stew and brought it to her lips. The smell was rich and savory, completely different from Velothean cuisine. She tasted it carefully. It was good. Different, but good. The flavors were stronger than she was used to, more complex. She took another bite, then another. Across from her, Taeyang began eating his own meal, giving her space to process this new experience. They ate in comfortable silence. Around them, the market continued its noisy, chaotic business. But sitting at this small table, eating unfamiliar food with this patient human man, Nira felt something unexpected. She felt almost peaceful. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked suddenly. "I have been cruel to you, disgusted by you. I have made it clear that I find you and your people repulsive. Yet you continue to be patient and gentle. Why?" Taeyang set down his chopsticks. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear skies and gentle warmth. Nira woke early, her mind racing with thoughts she could not quiet. Today she would marry Taeyang, not because a treaty demanded it, but because she had chosen to stay. That choice made everything feel different, more real, more significant. Her attendants helped her dress in a combination of Velothean and human wedding traditions. The base garment was Velothean, flowing robes in deep purple and silver, marking her royal status. But over it, they added elements of Korean traditional dress that Taeyang's family had sent. A delicate jacket with embroidered flowers. A sash tied in the human style. The two cultures woven together in fabric and thread. Nira looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was neither fully Velothean nor fully human. She was something in between, something new. The thought did not frighten her as much as it once would have. Her chief attendant, Kess, adjusted the final layers of her outfit and stepped back. "You look beautiful, princess," she said quietly. Then more hesitantly, "Are you certain about this choice?" It is not too late to change your mind. I am certain, Nira replied, and she was. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She was still afraid, but it was a different kind of fear now, not the fear of contamination or disgust, the fear of stepping into an unknown future. A healthy fear, a human fear. The ceremony was being held in the garden where she had walked with Tae Yang, where he had caught her when she fell. The space had been transformed with decorations from both cultures. Velothian crystal lights hung from the trees, casting patterns of colored light. Human paper lanterns swayed gently in the breeze. Flowers from both worlds grew together in carefully arranged displays. Chairs had been set for guests, diplomats from various species, military officials, members of both families. The crowd was smaller than a typical royal wedding would have been on her home world. More intimate, more personal. Nira walked slowly down the garden path, her attendants following at a respectful distance. As she rounded the corner and the ceremony space came into view, she saw him. Tae Yang stood at the center of the garden, wearing traditional human wedding clothing. The dark fabric was formal and elegant, embroidered with subtle patterns. His hair was neatly styled. His posture was straight and dignified, but it was his eyes that caught her attention. He was watching her approach with an expression of quiet wonder, as if he could not quite believe this was really happening. Nira reached the space where he stood. They faced each other across a small distance, and the officiant, a human religious leader who had been trained in Velothian customs, began to speak. We gather today to witness the union of two people from different worlds, the officiant said in both languages. This marriage represents not just the joining of two individuals, but the bridging of two cultures. It is a testament to the belief that our differences can become our strengths, that fear can transform into understanding, and that love can grow even in the most unlikely circumstances. The ceremony followed both traditions. First, the Velothian rituals, the exchange of formal vows, the binding of symbolic cords representing duty and honor. Nira spoke the ancient words, her voice steady. Tae Yang repeated them carefully, his pronunciation practiced. Then came the human elements. The officiant asked if they came to this marriage of their own free will, without coercion or obligation. This was the moment. This was the point of no return. I do, Tae Yang said firmly, his eyes never leaving Nira's face. The officiant turned to Nira. Princess Nira, do you enter this union freely and willingly? Every eye in the garden was on her. She thought about the path that had brought her here. The terror of that first day, the disgust and prejudice she had carried like armor, the slow cracking of that armor through kindness and patience, the reading and learning, the market and the flower and the child with the ball. The choice to stay when she could have left. I do, she said clearly. I choose this freely. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not the expected response. The expected response was simply, yes, or I consent. But Nira wanted there to be no doubt. This was her choice, her decision, her commitment. She saw Tae Yang's expression soften, saw emotion flicker across his face before he composed himself. The officiant continued with the ceremony, speaking about partnership and respect, about the importance of communication and patience in building a life together. But Nira was only half listening. She was watching Tae Yang, noticing small details. The way he stood, balanced and calm, the slight calluses on his hands visible even from a distance, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Those hands that had caught her twice, those hands that had carried the sick and comforted the dying, those hands that had never once touched her without permission or necessity. Would she let those hands hold hers? By choice, not by accident? The officiant reached the final part of the ceremony. In both Velothian and human traditions, the joining of hands represents the joining of lives. If you both consent, please step forward and exchange this gesture. This was not strictly required by either culture's traditional wedding. It had been added as an optional symbolic element. Nira could decline. No one would judge her. She could maintain the distance she had always kept, and the marriage would still be valid, but she did not want to decline. She wanted to take this step. She wanted to choose connection instead of separation. Nira looked at Tae Yang. He had not moved. He was waiting as he had always waited for her to decide, for her to choose. His expression was open, vulnerable. If she refused this gesture, it would hurt him, but he would accept it. He would never force her. That was what gave her the courage to move. Nira stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She raised her hand, her blue skin pale against the darker background of the garden. Her fingers trembled slightly. She saw Taeyang's eyes widen with surprise, with hope. The crowd went completely silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Nira reached out and placed her hand in Taeyang's, skin to skin. Direct contact. No gloves, no barriers, no protection. His hand was warm. That was the first thing she noticed. The warmth of his skin against hers. Not burning, not uncomfortable, just warm and alive. His palm had those calluses she had seen, rough patches from work and training. His fingers were longer than hers, wrapping gently around her smaller hand. He did not grab or clutch. He simply held, his touch gentle and respectful. She felt the pulse in his wrist, steady and calm. She felt the small movements as he adjusted his grip to be more comfortable for her. She felt the restraint in his strength, the care he took not to overwhelm her. And she felt something else. A sense of connection, of being tethered to another person, of not being alone. The crowd gasped audibly. In Velothian culture, such contact was intimate beyond what was typically shown in public. But this was not entirely a Velothian wedding. And Nira had already broken so many rules, what was one more? Taeyang's fingers interlaced with hers, gentle pressure against her knuckles. He was smiling now, a full, genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face into something younger and lighter. "Thank you," he whispered, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. "Do not thank me yet," she whispered back, trying to maintain some dignity. "I am still learning how to do this." "We will learn together," he replied, echoing the words he had said in the market. The officiant, recovering from his surprise, completed the ceremony. "By the powers vested in me by both the Earth Coalition and the Velothian Empire, I declare you united in marriage. May your union bring peace to both your peoples and joy to both your lives." More words were spoken, formal blessings and official declarations, but Nira barely heard them. She was focused on the feeling of Taeyang's hand in hers, on the fact that she had done this, had chosen this, and had not fallen apart or died or been contaminated into ruin. She had simply held hands with her husband. And it was strange and new and a little frightening, but it was also okay, better than okay. It was the beginning of something. The ceremony ended and they were officially married. As they walked back down the garden path together, still hand in hand, the guests rose and cheered. Some looked pleased. Some looked shocked, but most looked hopeful, as if this strange union between such different beings might actually mean something for the future. The reception was held in a large hall that had been decorated in a fusion of both cultures' styles. There was food from both worlds, music that blended Velothian harmonics with human melodies, and guests mingling in ways that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Taeyang's family welcomed Nira warmly. His mother embraced her carefully, showing Nira the correct way to do it so she would not feel trapped or overwhelmed. His father spoke of the farm where Taeyang had grown up, telling stories of his son's childhood. His brother Do Hyun talked enthusiastically about starting cultural exchange programs for botanists. And young Yuna, the sister barely an adult, asked Nira about Velothian fashion and music with genuine curiosity. During the meal, traditional dishes from both cultures were served. Taeyang had made sure that everything offered to Nira was safe for Velothian consumption. But there was one dish, a human specialty called kimchi, that he particularly wanted her to try. "It is fermented vegetables," he explained, "very popular in Korean culture. My grandmother made this batch specifically,